Welcome to Paranormal Palace Radio, where truth equals reality, and truth is often stranger than fiction.
Hello everyone, welcome to Paranormal Palace Radio. This is your host, Royce the Redneck Radio Man, and joining me tonight's going to be Larry Flaxman, and he's the author of several books, including The Trinity Secret and The Deja Vu Enigma, if I'm not mistaken, amongst others. And, well, quite frankly, we were supposed to talk about a conference that him and Marie were going to be attending at the end of October. However, there's been some changes that's happened in the plans, and he's going to be unable to make that their symposium as well as Marie is. I do apologize for that, folks. However, y'all have already heard some of the other speakers on my show that's going to be there, and I might have some more coming up. I have to double check that. But the symposium's still going to go on, and I encourage everybody to attend. It's going to be a fun event and a very enlightening event. It's just that these two particular speakers are not going to be able to make it this particular year. Hopefully in the future they'll be able to make it when things are not as hectic, shall we say, for want of a better description. But Larry has agreed to go ahead and talk to me tonight about other subjects, since we did have the show scheduled on the docket. And he was telling me that he's got a new book coming out that I don't know how far he can go into detail on it. However, I'm pretty sure we can touch bases on it to some degree to kind of, maybe whet your appetite, since it's about time travel. Larry, how you doing tonight?
Hey, Royce, how are you? I'm certainly appreciate you having me on tonight.
Oh, I appreciate you coming back to my show. You and Marie, y'all are a very interesting couple. I love the way y'all mix things up with the, one party handles the metaphysical, the other party the scientific, and making it blend in the middle, because usually two people doing that could not get along, and you two have done a masterful job of making a great team at it.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah, it's kind of an interesting relationship how we do that. It works out really well. We have a new book. I can tell you the title of it, at least the initial title. We already have our publisher has sent us the initial cover for the book, and it looks absolutely fantastic. It is a book about time travel, and the book is, interestingly enough, named "This Book is from the Future: A Journey Through Portals, Relativity, Wormholes, and Other Adventures in Time Travel." So that's a project that we're working on right now. I was actually in the middle of working on a chapter when you called. That will be, I'm not sure when that will actually be released in the stores. It's due to our publisher sometime in February. So I imagine they'll probably get it into their catalog probably shortly after that. But it's going to be like our other books, similar from the perspective of we're going to take some very often difficult to comprehend scientific concepts and make them as easy to understand as possible. Things with relativity, for instance, and wormholes. Relativity especially. When people hear the word relativity, they instantly think good old Albert Einstein, and they think E equals MC squared, but they really have no idea what that means. And it's a very complex topic. And like our other books, we're going to attempt to present these very difficult to understand topics to the average person in a way that they can easily understand it and understand the connection and the relativity to the overall message of the book. So I'm really excited about it. This is a very fascinating topic personally to me. It's something I've always been interested in ever since being a little kid and watching, or actually reading as a little kid, H.G. Wells' The Time Machine. It's always something I've had a utter fascination with, and I'm excited to be writing a book about it.
Well, I got to tell you, I've had a lot of people tell me they were really interested in that particular topic. And now the understanding I have is space-time is a joined fabric. Is that correct?
It depends on how you look at it. Every day it seems like science is coming out with revised rules. It seems scientists are coming up with revisions to long-standing ideas and tenets in the scientific community. For instance, dimensions, it's always been a very solid scientific law that we live in a three-dimensional world. Well, we don't. Scientists have since come out and actually said that, no, we actually live in a four-dimensional world. There's, of course, the three spatial dimensions and the one temporal dimension of time. So scientists are now actually recognizing time as being a totally separate dimensional entity in itself. There's also quite a bit of scientific research, believe it or not, that's being done about time travel itself. There are actual legitimate science folks that are actually engaged in the research of time travel. Unlike, the majority of paranormal topics, and I use paranormal as a very broad-ranging term. Usually when people hear paranormal, they automatically think ghosts. Well, not so much. Paranormal really can refer to time travel, even to a certain extent. It's really any concept that's outside of the realm of scientific understanding. So this time travel does extend to paranormal. Well, I kind of lost my train of thought where I was going with that, but scientists they're absolutely coming out now and saying that there are certainly revisions to these long-standing laws. What we think we know may not necessarily be what actually is going on, and there have been, like I said, some very legitimate and fairly well-funded legitimate research projects into time travel. Oh, that's where I was going with that. Okay, I just remembered. Unlike my mainstay, paranormal investigation or ghost hunting, if you will, there's really not a whole lot of scientific collaboration on that. There's, when you mention the word ghost to a traditional scientist, you usually get some pretty funny looks. That's not something that's generally taken very serious within scientific circles. Unlike time travel, believe it or not, which actually is, time travel, it's far out of a concept as it might seem to you or me. It is something that our scientific brethren are actually taking seriously, and it's something that they believe is something that can very easily occur. In fact, there's been some experiments where they actually have successfully conducted time travel experiments. Granted, it was only a millisecond into the future that they were able to transport a photon, a light beam, into the future just by a millisecond. But I mean, it's a good basis. It's a good starting point. It certainly proves that study that they've done, that project, certainly proves that the theory of sound and the possibility of us time traveling forward and backwards within the timescape is certainly possible if we could manage the scale.
Yeah, I remember reading about that particular incident you're talking about, and I was like, that's really very, fascinating. I mean, granted, you're right, it's on a small scale, but as Mr. Spock once said on one of the Star Trek Next Generation shows, in order to landscape entire lawn, you only need to start with one flower. That's what that was, basically a starting point. Look
Yeah, you've got to start somewhere. Absolutely. I think we are certainly in the very beginning stages. I mean, if look back even over the last 50 years, look at the amount of incremental updates or the incremental increases in our knowledge that have occurred. I mean, 50 years ago, the concept of a computer, look at the concept of a computer versus the reality of today. I mean, you're walking around with handheld devices, cell phones, iPhones, things like that have, much more power than our early computing devices that were out, 40, 50 years ago that took up several rooms and didn't have, nearly a quarter of the processing capability that these little handhelds do. My watch, even my watch has more memory than one of the first computers out, the ENIAC, that was out. So, I mean, if you look at things from that perspective, we are definitely in the infancy of research into time travel. I mean, if you could somehow travel in the future now, 50 years ahead into the future, I truly believe that we will have a viable time travel solution in place. Now, I don't know if it'll be to the extent where we can just like we're hopping on an airplane and traveling to another destination. I don't know if it's going to be quite that advanced or not, but I certainly think that scientists will have, if not perfected, probably made some significant headways into the technological issues that are facing time travel today.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong on this, Larry, but aren't you also involved in the noetic sciences research that Edgar Mitchell founded?
Yes, I'm a member of IONS. Yep.
Okay, now that there is a very interesting field that's trying to, if I understand it correctly, combine the unseen or the spiritual realms with the scientific realms, or to try to find a way to make them compatible to some degree or something, or?
Well, you've got the basic idea right. Noetics basically can encompass a very large bandwidth of different ideas. But the governing idea, I guess, the joining idea that Noetics seeks to accomplish really is the bridging the gap, basically, between metaphysical and physical science. They're looking to be able to answer things that traditionally have not been hard yes or no, black and white type answers with exactly that. I know a lot of the research that Edgar Mitchell's group, IONS, again, is doing research into. They do a lot of stuff with telepathy, extrasensory perception, a lot of things like that we've labeled paranormal, again, like that all-encompassing term, but that they're actually bridging that to the humanity side. They're bridging it to the psychological side, to the scientific side. They're basically drawing from different disciplines to try to look for answers. That's basically what it comes down to. Traditional science, for some reason, stays very narrow-minded. The answers that traditional science looks for usually has to be very much black and white. It's very much a yes or a no, or a binary 0 or 1. There always has to be a absolute in traditional science. Noetics is really kind of the polar opposite of that, in that they're looking at things that are outside of the scope or outside of the realm of traditional science. And, the idea of that yes or no, black or white, 0 or 1, grays out a little bit in Noetics. There is certainly a different fundamental understanding or a different fundamental belief system in how Noetics is approached versus how traditional science is approached. I think it's actually, to me, I'm much more interested in the Noetic approach to research of these types of topics, just because, to me, I believe that it's much more open-minded. It seems like science, traditional science, oftentimes is very closed-minded, in my opinion.
I think it has more possibility for, shall we say, advancement as well.
Sure.
Due to its open-mindedness, in fact.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, I was going to say that Edgar Mitchell was on my show a few years back when Hurricane Ike came through, and we talked about his noetic sciences briefly. And if I got it correctly, if memory serves me correctly, he was the one that, or his group, his noetic sciences group, should I say, made the discovery that particles can communicate instantaneously from billions of miles apart. So
that came from IONS research.
Wouldn't that discovery right there indicate that there's some way that time can be nullified to some degree or something? I mean, how do they make this communication instantaneously when you include space-time in between them?
You're asking very deep philosophical and scientific questions. You're my new best friend. That's an awesome question, Royce. And the simple answer is, we don't know. We don't know what it is. There's obviously some kind of a mechanical mechanism that's in place there. For your listeners that are not familiar with it, basically there was an experiment that was conducted a couple of years ago. IONS was one of the leading researchers on this project, but basically they were able to show that two particles that had become entangled or entwined, and they're actually photon particles, if I remember correctly, and they were then separated by a very large geographic distance. That when one of the particles was manipulated, the other one that was separated would show a very similar reaction as well. Even though there was no physical connection, there was a tremendous geological or geographic boundary between the two. There's some type of a connective mechanism that seems like it's in place. That is absolutely fascinating to me, and that's something that we wrote fairly heavily about in several of our books. We wrote about it in The Resonance Key, The Deja Vu, Enigma, and not as much in The Trinity, but it was briefly mentioned. That concept of not only does somewhat tie into time travel because it's kind of an FTL, a faster than light type travel. But it also could be, to me, it's much more interesting. The much more interesting aspect of it is that it would also help to explain a lot of other things that we consider to be paranormal. The ability to influence particles at a distance that are disconnected from each other might also explain ESP. It might explain telepathy, psychic abilities. It could even help to explain, traditional ghost sightings. There's obviously, Marie and I, my writing partner, have actually formulated a theory, and we have an idea, and we're actually working on another completely separate project that's kind of a theory of everything, or TOE, if you will. And it encompasses this idea to a certain extent, but somewhat modified. And we've called this the grid. Basically, we believe that there is this interconnecting grid that encompasses everything that ever is, was, or will be. It's kind of like this. I wouldn't even call it so much a physical type structure, but this grid infrastructure is in place, and it allows things like that to happen. It's not something that's able to be measured. There's been people that have talked about similar concepts in the past. One of the ideas was Edgar Casey's idea of an Akashic field.
That's what I was thinking. You sounded like.
Yeah, that's very similar to what we've actually applied real science to in our grid theory. The Akashic field, people have called it ether or ether, the ether, the aether, things like that. But the concept differs fairly significantly in our concept of it, but we believe that not only there's not only a physical connection between connected, or I've seen it. It's hard to verbalize a lot of this because it is such a deep topic. But we believe that there is this connective mechanism that not only is between physical objects, but it also can include information, energy. Basically, everything is connected in our theory of the grid. And that if you've ever heard the old theory about if you, what was that? When you swat a fly and it starts a rainstorm or something on the other side of the world, it's kind of like that. There's some type of a connective mechanism between all of us, and that we all are connected at some very basic level. How many times do you think any of your listeners have had an experience where they've been fast asleep at night, and all of a sudden they wake up for no reason? They don't know what it is, but they just wake up, and then all of a sudden the phone rings, and there was a reason why. There's maybe an accident in the family, or an accident, something like that.
I think that's probably a lot more common than a lot of people realize.
Oh, absolutely, I think it is. When you know certain things, some people would really attribute that. They call it their gut feeling or their intuition, or, things like that. What if it really isn't? What if we really are somehow connected to these people? You've probably heard stories about when one family member is injured, the other family member, oftentimes, especially with like twins, that the other family member will feel physical pain, even though they're not physically connected, and the other one was not at the side. Very
much like a husband feeling sympathy pains when his wife's in labor.
Absolutely, right, very much so. I mean, there's obviously some type of a connective mechanism. Again, we call it the grid, but it's not something that science really has an understanding for. We acknowledge that yes, there is something there. We don't know how to study it because we don't even know how to quantify it. It's one of those things where it's like love. There's such a thing as love, but it's not something that can be measured on a scale, and it's not something that can be actually quantified by number of units, like you can say for weight or other types of measurement. It exists. It's a real concept. It's something that is very powerful, but you really have no way of actually measuring it, and that's the exact same philosophy behind our grid concept.
Yeah, it's kind of like emotions. They exist. They're very real. You experience them, but you have no means to quantify them other than their effect after the fact.
Right, exactly.
And, even the Bible itself, if you don't mind me, bringing that into play here, does mention, what would to me be such a grid or another terminology for the grid when it speaks of the kingdom of heaven or the kingdom of God. And it's sure. Jesus, when he spoke of it, said it's inside of us and around us at all times, much like your grid would be.
Sure. Absolutely. There's, that's the fascinating thing really about this field is that there is so much to learn. There are so many concepts to theorize about, and so much things to study. That's when people say, "Oh, I'm burned out on the paranormal field" or whatever. I mean, well, obviously you've limited yourself in scope to one area of the paranormal, but I mean, there's just so much out there. There's mystery upon mystery, and that's really what attracts me to this type of field. The fact that there is such a wide open space as far as conceptual ideas that can be theorized on.
That's exactly what I try to do in my show. I try to cover anything at all that might be considered unexplained, whether it's religion, spiritualism, Satanism, UFOs, ancient mysteries, ghosts, quantum mechanics, which, on the surface, a lot of people would say quantum mechanics is not paranormal, but its connection to the spiritual world is paranormal,
Sure it is.
So,
within quantum physics, I think probably lies quite a few answers to the things that we are calling traditional paranormal events. It's just, we don't have a solid understanding yet of the mechanics of why or how, but I think it does. I mean, that's the beauty of this field. There is so many unknowns, and, if anyone ever tells you that they are an expert in the paranormal, that's when you raise your red flag and you call BS on it, because there really is no experts in this field. There may be subject matter experts within a specific discipline of the field, like there may be quantum physicists, for instance, that actually are subject matter experts on quantum physics, but it's not going to extend outside of that. You're not going to have one person that, I was on a radio show, I guess, 3 or 4 weeks ago, and I won't say the name of the show, but, the guy was on there professing that he was an expert in the paranormal, that he was an absolute expert when it came to ghosts and demons and, all that stuff. And, I couldn't help but laugh, because there really is no experts. I mean, this is a field that is, the paranormal itself is a field that is, by its very definition, unknown. And you cannot be an expert in the unknown.
Exactly what I was thinking while I was listening to you. If you did have an expert in it, it would no longer be the unknown.
Exactly.
So by its definition, it's impossible to be an expert, because then it no longer becomes that. No longer, it ceases to exist. So, that's why I would raise an eyebrow to that too. Me personally, I think it's really more about the learning and the journey than it is about the knowing in the end anyway.
We are on the same page, my friend.
There's a whole big world of fascination out there. If you look outside the box of fact and figures into the world of the unknown and the probabilities and the possibilities, you can have a lot more entertainment,
Oh, absolutely. Even if you look outside of just even the physical things to study, outside the physical things, besides the pyramids and besides, all of the world mysteries that exist, the Nazca Plains and Atlantis and, things like that. Look outside the physicalities of it, and you've still got this gigantic group of other unknown things. For instance, psychology. To me, the greatest and most least studied, I guess you would say, aspect of this entire phenomena of the unknown is us. There is this gigantic piece of the puzzle that's been missing. That's my biggest bitch with the paranormal community is that there is one common denominator that's present during every single paranormal. And I'm using paranormal as ghosts within every single paranormal event. What is it? It's you, the observer. There's obviously a person that is there's a psychology. There's a humanism. There is some type of human connection to the event, and that's something that is woefully understudied, if studied at all. That's something my group studies, and I think probably a handful of other groups out there, but the vast majority of paranormal groups, they have no clue about the psychological aspect whatsoever. That's not even something that's looked at. But my point is, if you throw out all the physical mysteries that are out there, there's still a tremendous amount of mysteries that remain. If you really truly are so bored with studying everything else, or you think you have the answer to everything else, look inside yourself. Study the psychological aspect, what your connection to the event actually is. How is it that two people in a room standing together, how is it that one person can have a supposed ghost come up and touch him on the back of the neck, and the person standing right next to him doesn't? To me, that's fascinating. The mechanism, the humanism, the psychology behind all that stuff, that is something to me that, it's just fascinating.
Well, not long ago I had Lloyd Auerbach on my show.
Yeah, I know Lloyd.
We were talking about that. And it was him and another one. I'll be doggone it, for some reason, the other guy's name is slipping my mind, but they both had a part in that latest book, Ghost, Spirits, and Haunting by New Page Books. I think you might have had a part in it.
Okay. Yep. Both do. We have an essay in that book, sure.
But at any rate, we were talking about the psychological end of ghost hunting that night, and I would say that these people would definitely agree with you on that. We even talked about the possibility of how the human mind could actually generate these here things into the physical material realm.
Absolutely. Yeah, we actually, it's funny you bring that up. That's something that we talk very, very strongly in our fourth book, The Trinity Secret, about. We talk about how the physical manifestation can, how powerful the human mind is, and the ability to physically manifest things. Your intention, the power of intention and your perception, how those things are, the most incredible powers available to us. One of the most popular books that I can remember in the last couple of years has been the book The Secret, the Rhonda Byrne book, The Secret. Well, the secret really isn't a secret. There's no secret to the concepts that are in that book. Basically, you can distill it all down to a couple of sentences. And here's for your listeners that haven't gone out and bought the book. It's an awesome book, and I would recommend it reading, certainly. But here's the entire concept of the book. You get what you wish for. That's basically it. If you have an intention, if you strongly intend for something to happen, then the powers of the universe and the powers of human psychology and all of the things that we don't know somehow are able to mix all that together and to actually physically manifest your want. Of course, there's different levels of that. I mean, you really have to focus on it. You can't. That could be a whole show topic in itself. The power of intention is absolutely, without a doubt, the strongest power that is known to man, and it's something that is greatly misunderstood. It's something that's not been studied by traditional science, but it's something that we know to be a very viable and realistic thing. But that could be very, very much a part of that. The direction I was going with that was that the psychological aspect of a lot of these things is that, yes, perhaps not only are we an integral part of the experience, but perhaps we are actually creating the experience, or we are certainly some type of a trigger or some type of a tensor to the actual event itself. Maybe we are creating it somehow subconsciously. And in fact, there's been a lot of, I wouldn't say legitimate research, but there's been a lot of research into the poltergeist phenomena. And I think the prevailing current ideas about poltergeist are that they are basically self-created entities that are designed basically subconsciously and manifested to reality by your intention, by a person's intentions. Well, not your intention, Royce, but they believe that it's primarily preteen females that are somehow able to. Perhaps it's a hormonal thing,
right?
Maybe some kind of a hormonal chemical connection to it, but it's a reality in that they are somehow able to manifest those things with their intention, much like what we're talking about.
Well, yeah, I had Michael Clarkson on here a few months ago, and his book is called The Poltergeist Phenomena, And he goes into great detail about what you're describing right there about the mind. And he was mentioning that it was in teens, but he did say that he thought it was in male and female alike, and gave several cases for it. He talked about people actually being able to, with their minds, lift refrigerators, and he was tying together their emotions during their preteen or their adolescent years with their subconscious, and that they were really unaware that they were doing this. However, they were doing it nonetheless, was the only explanation he was able to come up with.
Right.
Which that sounds pretty fantastic, but, I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that a lot of people may not be aware. I know I don't understand the concept fully, but I have theories on it about how human conscious energy, thought energy, interreacts with the ether that can make these kind of things happen if you only understood how it worked.
Sure. And that, again, that's the beauty of this field. I mean, there is so much unexplained, and there are so many different avenues of exploration that if one was inclined to do that, that's certainly something that certainly could use more research. Absolutely.
Oh, I think a lot of this stuff could use more research. This is where I think science misses the boat at, is if it doesn't meet certain criteria, then it just doesn't even get looked into at all. And I think they missed something by doing that. I mean, I wouldn't ask science to say, hey, this is a true, actual, bona fide, concept without no backing, without being able to prove it. But I'm not talking about claiming it as a fact. I'm talking about being willing to investigate it.
Right. And, of course, there's certainly a stigma attached to certain things within the field. So, I think that's probably one of the greatest fears of scientists and folks that are in the field or that are in legitimate fields that are, that they're scared of their involvement because of what it could do to them professionally. I think that's changing. I think that the paradigm is slightly shifting, and that you're seeing serious people like the work that's being done at IONS and some of the folks that are involved in that. You're seeing those type things like what we're talking about becoming more of a mainstream acceptable type idea. It used to be, 15, 20 years ago, if you mentioned anything about, if you ever mentioned that you were a ghost hunter, you were interested in a paranormal investigation, people would look at you like you were a nut job. And, with the advent of certainly with commercial television, with the shows that are out there, that's really been brought to mainstream culture. And same thing with, UFOs, cryptozoology, all those shows that are on TV that bring those type topics to the public's view have really helped to make those things more of a legitimate type modality for people to study.
That plus radio shows like mine and Jeff Prince, sure. Actually more so Jeff Prince and George Norrie, because God knows they're a lot more popular than my show. But any show, really anybody, anything you put on the internet of like our show, it's being recorded right now. It's going to go into the archive. It'll be there for prosperity. Search engines pick it up, and who knows who all's going to listen to it over, the next 5, 10, 15 years that it's sitting there in the archive.
Right.
Anything on the internet's like that. That's why there's such, so much information right at your fingertips, at your computer screen, because people like me and you add this here stuff and it stays there, and, it just fills up search engines.
Sure. To kind of tie this back in with the time travel stuff we were talking about, the internet is a really interesting, a really interesting thing. I was looking at a website the other day, the Google Wayback Machine, which allows you to look at websites, a snapshot of a website as it appeared on a specific date, X number of years ago. And it was really interesting. I was looking at the progression of eBay to watch it. I'm a big eBay fanatic, and to watch the progression of how the homepage on eBay changed over the past couple of years. And some might even argue that is a form of time travel in itself. You are information traveling back in time, that you're able to affect, a type of one-way time travel to be able to view those things. And of course, that's certainly I would say that's very much a question to be answered, whether that's considered traditional real time travel or not. But it's interesting nonetheless. The internet, 50 years from now, our concept of the internet is probably going to be vastly different than what it is even today. Because over the span of the internet, I've been interested in computers and everything since I guess I was about 16. And before the internet was even around, I was on with my 300 baud dial-up modem, dialing into the bulletin boards. And I've seen the progression over the past 25 plus years from dial-up service of one person at a time, connecting to these bulletin boards and leaving message postings for other people to the internet that we have today. And that's just been within the span of probably 25 years. And if you imagine 50 years from now, imagine the information that we have today on the internet and the amount of it that's on there, the terabytes and terabytes of data and information and what we have today. Imagine that 50 years from now. So, maybe that will be a form of time travel 50 years from now, to be able to see kind of snapshots of what things were like, back in 2011 or back in the heyday of the internet, back in the early 80s, for instance. Don't know. Very interesting sociological question, I think, there.
Well, you got me to thinking. I've heard before that when they look through telescopes or however they do it, look back through time at the beginning to the Big Bang, the further back they go, they actually travel back through time. So right. Isn't that already a form of time travel, what they're doing to...
It is, certainly. Yeah, I mean, light travels at a certain speed, and, the distance that some of the creations of stars that have occurred, things like that, the distance that we are from them, when the light just reaches us now, that could have been for planets that have been long gone for millions of years, but the light from the creation of it or whatever is just now reaching us. Sure, that's a form of time travel. You're looking at, I think it is anyways, you're looking at information, you're looking at a snapshot, again, like, what I was seeing on the internet, but you're seeing a snapshot of something that occurred, 20 million years ago. It may not still be in existence, but it's still, it's a form of time travel, I believe, certainly.
Well, yeah, it's like an image of time travel in nature.
Sure.
At least to me it would be.
Like I said, yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. Of course, I think, that would, to me, is very, very similar to what we were just discussing about the internet. When you look at these websites that were when they were first designed and compare them with now, to me, that's a form of time travel too. I mean, it's a one-way form of time travel, but it's still nonetheless very similar to that.
Yeah, it is one way. It's all backward, but in the same token, if you were to follow that light beyond our point where we're at, it would be going future. Can you even follow that light forward?
I don't know. That would be a good question.
That'd be a good one for me too, but the thought occurs to me that that's an indication that yes, there is a possibility of this time travel, but you'd probably have to, I would think, and I'm no scientist, so I'm really probably not qualified to say, but it would seem to me like if you were going to travel through time, you would have to probably break the speed of light to do it.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, you absolutely would have to. Some of the research that we've come across in the research for this book has said, and of course, again, there are no experts in this field, and this is really very much of an unknown still, but that the prevailing theory out there is that in order to travel back in time, that you would only be able to travel back as far as the creation of the machine itself. So, if you're able to create a time travel machine in 2011, such as the one that Professor Ronald Mallett from the University of I think Connecticut has vowed to do. He thinks he's going to have a working time travel machine by the end of the year. Then you'd only be able to travel back in time to the creation of that machine, back to the genesis of that back in 2011. Of course, you could travel forward in time, but only back to the creation. So I don't know. Maybe there's lots of issues that are involved, potential issues involved in real-time travel outside of just read-only time travel, like what we're talking about with the Wayback Machine on Google and things like that. When you start talking about being able to really time travel physically, forward or backwards in time, you have to talk about paradoxes, time paradoxes, the possibility of you screwing something up and never being born, therefore how did you time travel in the first place? That's a huge paradox in itself. Going back in time, killing your grandfather, you never were born, therefore you never time traveled back in time, you never killed your grandfather, and it's kind of this repeating cycle. There's still a lot of issues to be worked out with time travel. Conceptually, I think that it's certainly, something that scientists obviously have taken a great belief in because of the amount of research that's occurring right now. But, I think there's still so many issues, so many unknowns that, it's impossible at this point to say, this is what time travel will be like in 50 years, or we absolutely will be able to travel back in time before the creation of the time machine, or back to the beginning of time, or back to the dinosaurs. We just don't know at this point.
This is true, but I tell you what, at least it seems to me like in today's world, we got more great minds working on it than we had, say, 100 years ago.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Absolutely. So, that gives it a lot of possibility. And I've talked to some people on my show about this here who feel like you could possibly time travel without a machine during astral travel.
Yeah, absolutely. That's another concept that people have floated out there about time traveling. And we talk about that in this upcoming book, about how people may actually be time traveling today via dreams, astral travel, things like that. Certainly that's an idea. There have been people that have claimed to have astrally traveled back and forth in time and provided great details about historical events that have occurred in the past that have been able to been corroborated with research. So, that brings up that question, again, is there some sort of a connective grid mechanism that somehow these people were able to jump on and access, and they were able to pull information from the future or from the past, or, from this great storehouse of information like the Akashic files that Edgar Casey speaks of. But that is absolutely something that we do talk about. That's something that, I think is certainly a real possibility. That is, again, that would probably fall outside of the realm of physical time travel. That would certainly be one more of a psychological, astral type thing. People talk about astral travels and they talk about dream travel and things like that. And I think this is really no different than that. I mean, it's certainly a concept that seems like it would be it would have potential reality in, but there hasn't been a whole lot of research in that aspect of it. Most of traditional science that's focusing on time travel now, like I mentioned, Dr. Mallet, is focused on the physical aspects of time travel, how to physically transport a human being or a particle, photon, whatever, back and forth in time, rather than being able to dream about it.
Now, before we go too much further, because we got like 15 minutes or 18 minutes remaining, I wanted to make sure that I mentioned your website. Well, you got more than one. One of them is www.rpast.org, and I'm putting that in the chat room, by the way. I'm putting all these in the chat room. And you also have www.paraexplorers.com. And I wanted to also mention to everybody that if y'all want to know more about the symposium that's going to be coming up at the 25th of October through the 31st, y'all could go to www.aspesymposium.com, and all the information is there about all the speakers and all the events and how to get tickets for it and get set up to go. And I'm pretty sure they could probably give you ideas of where you could stay while you're there, since it is a 5 or 6 day event. And I didn't want to forget to put these into the chat room. I wanted to also ask you if there's anything that I didn't think to talk to you about that you'd like to tell the guest about, any projects or anything else you got coming up.
Oh gosh, we always have something going on. Well, we are Marie and I are about to release a line of ebooks. We've got a bunch of ebooks that we're going to try kind of our experiment with Kindle and Nook, see how we go with that. Our publisher, I think, is already doing that to a certain extent. I know they're doing it with the one on Amazon. What is that? The Kindle, the Amazon Kindle. I know they're publishing, I want to say three of our 4 books right now in that format. And I think Barnes & Noble, they're the ones with the Nook, I think. They're publishing, I think, all of our books in Nook format. But we have a line of ebooks that we're going to be producing, self-publishing these. We're not actually using a publisher. We're going to try to eliminate the middleman and do it ourselves and see what happens with that. But I think
you're going to provide them at your website?
Yeah, you'll have the ability to buy them at our website, but that's going to be kind of, I'm excited about that. We actually asked our publisher if they would be interested in doing that, and our publisher new page really is, they're great, but they focus on just traditional paper publishing, and we really wanted to do a multimedia type project where we could have video, music, sound. We could actually have a much more enchanted type experience than you would just get from reading a physical book. So the idea behind us getting the ebooks is that we're able to encompass some different things and some different technologies that we want to include in that, where people can get kind of an immersive experience in those. So working on that. We have a movie that is in pre-production right now. We have the screenplay that we have produced. It's called 19 Hertz. I believe the budget's been approved. They are working on casting, if I'm correct. I think they're actually in the casting process for that. So look for that in the movie theaters before too long, hopefully. Staying busy. We still write for several magazines that are out there. We write for New Dawn magazine, a couple other ones too, Paranormal magazine. Gosh, what else? There's always something. I mean, we're always working on some kind of a project between all of our writing stuff and everything that the research that I've got with our past going on. There's always something new.
Yeah, I know y'all always got books coming out. I know Marie told me one day that Nick put out more books than anybody she knows, but it seemed to me like she almost keeps up with them.
Yeah.
Actually, both of y'all write a lot of y'all's together.
Right.
But yeah, y'all make some very, very interesting books too. I gotta tell you, I've read The Trinity's Secret, and I can tell you it was very fascinating. Nick Redfern makes some very fascinating books as well. I've read his Contactees and The Men in Black, and I'm hoping to Keep Out if I get lucky.
Yeah, he's a really, have you ever met him? A really cool cat. Really fun guy to hang around.
No,
Yeah.
I have not met him in person, although he's been on my show several times, and we've kind of established a rapport with each other. He's up in Dallas and I'm in Houston, and
Right.
I guess we don't never get in each other's neck of the woods.
Yeah, I have a blast talking to him and Ken Gerhard. I'm very proud to say they're both good friends of mine, and you know it's very enlightening for me to be able to talk to folks that are really that are engaged in research of things that I really haven't focused that heavily on, like Nick with the UFO type thing, Ken with the cryptozoology type projects that he does. You know, it's one of the greatest things to me is networking with people and, you know, sharing information. And that, you know, again, is another bitch of mine in the paranormal, is that there really is not a whole lot of peer review. There's not a whole lot of sharing of information between folks. And I get a lot of pleasure from that personally, being able to sit down with the Nick Redferns of the world or the Ken Gerhards of the world and bounce ideas off of them. You know, I've always been interested in UFOs. I've always been interested in crypto stuff, but, you know, I'm far from being as knowledgeable as those two folks are. So it's awesome for me to be able to sit down in a room, ask them questions, and, you know, they ask me questions about the things that I probably have more experience in than them. And I wish that happened more in this field. I wish there was more groups that were out there that were willing to sit down and actually share information, rather than, it seems like the very first thing that happens when a group goes out and does a paranormal investigation and they think they found a spectacular photograph or something, the very first thing they do is slap their little logo on it, put it on their website, and that's it. They automatically proclaim, this is a full-bodied apparition captured at blah, blah house at such and such time and date. There's no peer review. They don't send that image to other groups for their input of their analysis of it. And that really bothers me. You know, that is probably one of the largest complaints that I have about that and the amount of drama that's in the field. That, you know, traditional science will probably never take paranormal investigation seriously because of that very thing, because there is really no standardization, there is no peer review process, there is no scientific methodology that's followed. It's kind of, for the most part, just a group of folks that are out there, hobbyist folks that are out there
making their best guess.
Yeah, not only just taking their best guess, but it seems to me like a lot of these groups really are not. They don't have the educational background. They don't have any kind of scientific. They haven't even gone beyond Chemistry 101 maybe in high school. But not even just that. To me, it seems like a lot of the groups that are out there, and I know there are legitimate groups out there, but it seems like more groups are represented that are strictly out there just to scare the crap out of themselves. That it's really more of a social type event for them than it is a research event. It's a way to get away on the weekends and just get the crap scared out of them and have fun than it is for conducting serious scientific research. I mean, people watch the shows on TV, and of course it glamorizes ghost hunting, paranormal investigation. It makes it look like it's nonstop action, and that it's one thing after another. And in a 60-minute episode, it's you watch as things unfold one after another. Well, I can tell you that's not reality. That's not the way it happens. And what they also don't show you, and what really is kind of it's a wake-up call to a lot of folks, is the hours and hours and hours of research that occurs after the fact, when you have to go back through and review all the data that was captured during the investigation, looking for any kind of anomaly. That, even beyond that, even if you find something that's out of the ordinary, it doesn't mean it's paranormal like a lot of groups automatically assume. There may be a very good explanation for whatever it was that was occurring. That's when peer review is supposed to kick in. You're supposed to share that data and that information with other individuals out there to get their take on it, see what ideas they may have. And it doesn't happen like that. And I wish that it would. I wish that things were different. If there was... There's been several attempts to have a governing body of paranormal investigation, to have kind of a consortium, if you will, but it'll never happen. It's a spectacular idea. I think it's one that's greatly needed. I wish we had some standardization. I wish there was methodologies that were followed that everyone could easily have a reference to and follow. But the problem is there's too many egos in this field. There's too many mom and pops that don't have the money to buy standardized pieces of equipment. It's never going to be taken seriously. And I say that, and I hate that, but that's the unfortunate reality of the situation.
I know what you mean. I tell you what, I'm actually the South Texas director over at United Paranormal International, and the one thing I like about that group is that they want to have everybody's input. They don't want to, down anybody's ideas, or, nobody can really technically be right or wrong. They admit that we're dealing with the realm of the unknown, and their objective goal is to solely to investigate and get each other's feedback and try to see what they can conclude from it, rather than, approaching, I've done this and this is what this is, in other words. You know what I'm saying? Sure. So I like to put a plug in for United Paranormal International every time I get a chance, because, well, I think they're doing a good thing out there, and I think people should know about them. Well,
I think that's great. That's awesome that there are other groups out there like your group and my group, but unfortunately, Royce, I think we are probably the minority.
Yeah, I would agree.
The vast amount of folks that are out there, they watch the shows on TV. It gets them excited. They get interested in paranormal investigation. They start their own group. They find out that it's not quite what they see on TV, or they continue on their group as a social type event. But we see, especially around October, I do a lot of radio shows during the month of October, obviously because of Halloween. People want me to get on and talk about ghosts and ghost hunting and all that stuff. And when I get on and I talk about the science of ghost hunting and talk to folks about the reality of what it's actually like, and we usually get a pretty strong upsurge in membership during the month of October. But then when we get folks into training and we actually take them out on a couple of test investigations, and they realize that it's a hell of a lot of work, that it's actually not, it's not all just fun and games and sitting around joking, that there's a lot of actual work that goes into it. People lose interest in it. They it's not something that they want to put any resources into or put any kind of real focus on. And it's unfortunate, but it is what it is. And it's, I've been in the paranormal field for about 15 years now, and it's, I've seen the upswing and the downswing, and it seems like, paranormal research, not just ghost hunting, but paranormal research kind of it ebbs and flows with the tide. I mean, it seems like it's a cyclical thing very much. There's certainly periods of time where it's much more popular, and you start seeing tons and tons of groups that are popping up to do ghost hunting, for instance. But then you see, for every 10 groups that start up, then you see 9 of them that shut down within a couple of months. And it's, I've seen that year after year after year. That really hasn't changed.
Yeah, and I imagine it's probably very discouraging for you.
Well, not really. Not really, because to me, the folks that are into this for the wrong reason are really not the target demographic of folks that really belong in my group in this type of research, engaged in this type of research.
Okay, yeah, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, the people that we end up weeding out through attrition, or that end up leaving on their own accord or whatever, are generally not the long-term people that we really want involved in our organization anyways. I mean, they're not in it for the long haul. They're just in it, for the most part, to have something fun to do on the weekends. And then when they find out it's not so much fun, and it's actually a lot of work, then that's when they kind of disengage from it. And that's not the target of folks that we really want involved in our organization anyways. The only thing that's disconcerting to me is that, I guess the thing that does upset me a little bit about it is that things like that give all of us, like your group and my group, all of us somewhat of a bad black eye. They see all these groups. Well, here's a perfect example. There was a group here in Arkansas, and I won't say the name of it, but it was a I wouldn't say very successful group, but it was a moderately successful group that started up. They were doing a lot of investigations. They had quite a few members, but then they found out that the individual that was running this organization, every time she would go do an investigation, she would take souvenirs home with her. In other words, she was stealing from the locations that she went to. Well, you don't hear about the 10 groups that are doing good. All you then hear about and, publicized and blasted out to the world is the one group that's out there stealing stuff. And, that one group does damage to all of the other groups that are out there that are legitimate. So then when I come back, or another group in my state comes back that is legitimate, wanting to do an investigation at one of these locations that had been previously bitten by this person, we get told no. So that does hurt a little bit. I mean, that bothers me a little bit. We sometimes get denied access to locations because of the stupidity of other people. But for the most part, as far as members, it doesn't bother me that much. It's just part of the course.
Well, and everything does have a downside. I know that people like that, they do give other people a bad name, and it's hard to live it down. I've come around behind people like that in different areas myself, so yeah, it's sad. It really is.
Well, you hear about these people that are caught trespassing, doing ghost hunting. There was 2 kids that died last year. They went and did a ghost hunting investigation on their own, and they ended up falling off the roof of a building or something. They were trespassing on the roof of this place in the first place, and of course, that gives all of us kind of a bad rap. People look at those 2 individuals as kind of a cross-section of what the paranormal community, probably what they believe the paranormal community is like. And, that's absolutely not the case. Just like that individual that was stealing from the locations. She didn't represent the totality of how, what the other groups out there are like. I mean, that was just one person. That was one instance. Same thing with the 2 folks falling off the roof. That was, one instance. It doesn't represent everyone.
Right, but she was the one that was being graded by.
No, absolutely. And, you never hear the good stuff. You always hear the bad stuff. The bad stuff is what makes it to the news and what, gets the publicity, unfortunately.
That's true. Well, listen, it's 9:00, and I'm getting ready to call it quits for the night on my show so I can get ready to get to bed early enough to get my son up for school tomorrow. But I wanted to thank you for coming, and I want to let you know I had a really interesting talk with you. You're a real pleasure to interview. And I also wanted to mention to all the listeners that you might want to come back again this Saturday at 1 p.m. when I'll be interviewing Jim Harold, who is also a radio show host. And he's got a new book out called Campfire, True Ghost Stories, in which he's listed a lot of the ghost stories that have came to him on his show into a book for y'all's review or for y'all to enjoy, whichever the case may be. So it should be a pleasant little interview, just like this one with Larry was. And Larry, I would like to see you come back and maybe tell us more about your book when it comes out and, whatever other new things you got going on.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'd love to, Royce, anytime. This hour absolutely flew by. Yeah,
I think it did too. It went by pretty quick, but I think when you get to, talking about things, of interest to you that you tend to forget about the time for the most part.
Yeah, absolutely. We time traveled, if you really think about it.
Yeah, that is true. Actually, I think you time travel anyway just by walking across the room or, staying awake for your next hour. Even when you're asleep, time goes by the whole time you're there. So in a sense, it's just living is time travel.
Yep, you're right.
If you look at it the right way, I mean. But, all righty, I'm going to time travel into tomorrow morning asleep. So we'll talk at you, Larry. Later.
Thanks a lot,
Thanks
Royce.
a lot.
Have
Bye-bye.
a good one. Bye-bye.